They weren't recalled. They weren't banned. They weren't even famous when they were new. They simply slipped through the cracks. Built during a narrow window when American manufacturers answered to no one, these cars were never meant to survive. Some were created by accident, others exploited loopholes. A few existed because engineers pushed harder than anyone authorized. 2 Coronet Hemis, 15 Tornado Mustangs, 7 final Cuda convertibles built as the walls closed in. Production numbers so microscopic that even the factories seemed to forget they existed, until collectors started asking questions. 1970 Ford Mustang Twister Special. In 1970, Ford faced a problem it never planned for. A regional racing organization had ordered nearly 100 grabber orange Mustangs to serve as promotional vehicles. The cars were already built, painted, and ready for delivery when the organization suddenly collapsed. The deal vanished overnight. Ford was left with almost 100 finished Mustangs and no place to send them. Scrapping them would have meant taking a loss. So Ford made a quiet decision that would later turn into legend. The cars were rebranded as the Twister Special, a name chosen specifically for dealerships in Kansas, Northwest Arkansas, and Western Missouri. Tornado Alley. There was no national advertising, no brochure, no official VIN code to identify them. Under the hood, buyers could choose between a 300-horsepower 351 Cleveland or the far more aggressive 428 cubic inch V8. Both could be paired with either an automatic or a 4-speed manual. That created 4 possible combinations, and only 96 cars total, just 24 of each configuration. Most were driven hard, some were raced. Many disappeared completely. Today, authentic Twister Specials are extremely difficult to verify, and when one does surface, it commands around $150,000. Not because it was famous, because it was never supposed to exist. 1969 Plymouth Hemi Road Runner Coupe. Plymouth built the Road Runner to be cheap. Take a basic B-body platform, strip out the luxury, bolt in a 308A3 big block, and sell it for under $3,000. Plymouth moved over 44,000 units in the first year. But then someone asked the wrong question. What happens if you put the Hemi in it? The 426 Hemi wasn't designed for budget cars. It was Chrysler's race-proven monster that required constant maintenance, drank premium fuel, and carried a price tag that made accountants nervous. Adding it to the Road Runner pushed the cost up by nearly $900. Plymouth built fewer than 850 Hemi Road Runner coupes in 1969. Drag racers understood what they were buying. A lightweight platform with an underrated engine that could run deep into the 12s right off the showroom floor. The official rating was 425 horsepower. Real output was closer to 500. Chrysler lied to keep insurance companies and regulators at bay. Today, survivors trade hands for $250,000 to $400,000 depending on condition. Not because they were practical, because they were brutal. 1969 Plymouth Hemi GTX Convertible. That same year, Plymouth made an even stranger decision. The 1969 Plymouth Hemi GTX Convertible combined the Hemi engine with a drop-top body, creating a combination so rare that only 17 were ever built. The GTX sat above the Road Runner with more features and a higher price point. Convertibles were already a dying breed by 1969. The muscle car market had shifted toward hardtops and coupes. A convertible added hundreds of pounds and introduced flex that hurt performance. The Hemi option added significant cost. Plymouth didn't advertise the combination. There were no magazine features. The option simply existed for buyers who specifically requested it. Most of those 17 cars were ordered by individuals who wanted exclusivity over performance. None were built for racing. The Hemi GTX Convertible was heavier than the hardtop, slower than the Road Runner, and far more expensive than either. 1970 Dodge Coronet R/T Hemi. Dodge had a similar problem in 1970. The Coronet R/T was their mid-size muscle platform, slotted between the Charger and the Dart. For 1970, Dodge technically made the 426 Hemi available as an option. Only 2 people ordered it. The issue wasn't mechanical. The Hemi fit perfectly in the Coronet's engine bay. The issue was positioning. Dodge already offered the Hemi and the Charger R/T, which had aggressive styling and instant recognition. They also offered it in the Super B, which was lighter and cheaper. The Coronet R/T existed in the middle, offering nothing the other two didn't already provide. Both cars were special orders, equipped with 4-speed manual transmissions and painted in basic colors. No fanfare. No press coverage. The 1970 Dodge Coronet R/T Hemi appeared, served its purpose, and disappeared. One car still exists, fully documented. The other has been lost to history. Collectors consider the surviving Coronet one of the most significant finds in Mopar history. The verified car last sold for over $1 million. 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. In 1964, Ford wasn't building muscle cars for the street. They were building weapons for the drag strip. The Fairlane Thunderbolt was a homologation special designed solely to dominate NHRA super stock racing. Then they installed a high-riser 427 cubic inch V8 that produced over 500 horsepower in race trim. Ford built exactly 100 units to meet NHRA homologation requirements. Most went to professional racers. The Thunderbolt dominated super stock racing in 1964, but that success triggered an immediate response. By 1965, the Thunderbolt was outdated. Today, surviving examples command $200,000 to $400,000, depending on originality and race history. 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11. Chevrolet's response came even earlier. The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 was a factory drag car masquerading as a full-size sedan. Chevrolet took the standard Impala, installed a 427 cubic inch W-Series engine, and prepared it for NHRA competition. The Z11 wasn't listed in any sales brochure. It wasn't advertised. It existed purely to satisfy NHRA homologation rules, which required minimum 50 production units for super stock eligibility. Chevrolet built exactly 57 cars. Each one was stripped of every unnecessary component. Aluminum body panels replaced steel on the hood, front fenders, and inner structure. The engine block itself was aluminum, saving over 100 pounds compared to iron. The Z11's engine produced over 430 horsepower on paper. Real-world output exceeded 500. Chevrolet abandoned the program after a single model year. The cars were sold off to racers, most of whom ran them until the engines failed. Today, fewer than 20 verified Z11 Impalas still exist. Original race-prepared examples command $500,000 to $750,000 at auction. The price reflects their extreme rarity and their role as proof that Chevrolet was willing to build anything to dominate. 1967 Ford Shelby GT500 Super Snake. By 1967, Carroll Shelby had already established himself as a performance legend. But the GT500 Super Snake took things to an entirely different level. This wasn't a production model. It was a one-off prototype built to test the absolute limits of Goodyear's new Thunderbolt tires. Shelby needed a car that could sustain speeds above 150 miles per hour for extended periods. The standard GT500 wasn't capable of that. So Shelby installed a 427 cubic inch racing engine, the same basic power plant used in Ford's GT40 Le Mans cars. The engine was officially rated at over 500 horsepower. Actual output was closer to 600. Shelby himself drove the car at Goodyear's high-speed test track in Texas, running flat out for 500 miles to prove the tires could handle extreme sustained loads. The tires survived. Shelby sold the car to a private buyer shortly afterward, and for decades, it remained largely unknown outside hardcore Shelby circles. The Super Snake resurfaced in the early 2000s, was authenticated by Shelby American, and sold at auction for $1.3 million in 2013. Ford and Shelby never intended to build more than one. The car was too powerful, too specialized, and too impractical for anything other than testing. Today, the Super Snake stands as one of the most valuable Mustangs ever created. Not because it was practical, because it was extreme. 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible. The 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible represents the end of everything. By 1971, the muscle car era was collapsing. Insurance companies had declared war on high-performance vehicles. Emissions regulations were tightening. Gas prices were rising. Plymouth still offered the 426 Hemi in the Cuda for 1971, but almost nobody ordered it. The engine added massive cost to an already expensive car. Insurance rates on a Hemi Cuda were often higher than the car payment itself. Young buyers couldn't afford it. Older buyers didn't want it. Plymouth built only 7 Hemi Cuda convertibles in 1971. Each one was a special order placed by a buyer who either didn't care about practicality or didn't understand what they were getting into. The 426 Hemi still produced 425 horsepower, though it had been detuned to meet emissions standards. The Cuda's aggressive styling and drop-top body made it one of the most visually striking cars ever built. But nobody cared. The market had moved on. Plymouth didn't promote the car, dealers didn't stock it. The 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible existed because a handful of buyers demanded it, not because it made business sense. Today, each of the 7 cars is worth between $3.5 million and $5 million, depending on condition and provenance. They are the most valuable muscle cars in existence, not because they were the fastest, because they represent the absolute final statement of an era that would never return. These 8 cars prove something critical. Rarity doesn't always mean fame. Sometimes the most valuable machines are the ones nobody noticed until it was too late. If your father, grandfather, or uncle ever mentioned seeing one of these on the street, drop a comment and tell us the story. If you know someone who might have driven past automotive history without realizing it, share this with them. And if you want more deep dives into the muscle cars that slipped through the cracks, hit subscribe. Because there are more of these stories out there. Cars that existed in numbers so small they're practically ghosts, and we're just getting started.